Magic the Gathering. I really have a kind of love and hate relationship with that game. Like, I've been playing it for, well, on and off playing it for 25 years now. And it wasn't my first trading card game. The very first one I played was the Pokemon trading card game, or Pokemon trading card game. And I was there at its inception. When it came to life, I was a red and blue and green kid. I was 10 years old when Pokemon came out, and I really loved it. And I got big into the trading cards of that. And then a couple of years went by, and I saw another game that you play with cards in the store. It was Magic the Gathering. And it was from the same makers as Pokemon. So I got in on that, and from the get-go I really loved it. And I was hooked on it, and I begged my parents to buy me cards. And even back then, the big kicker with it was that Magic was very expensive. Like getting booster packs or even getting starter decks. And back then, I think it was even a bit cheaper than it is nowadays compared to what you need to play. But yeah, I didn't get much, and what I got, we built some decks. We didn't know anything about metas or formats, and that went on and on until I was like 20, when I really watched my first pro tour on the internet, and I saw that there's a standard meta and all that, and I put so much money into Magic. You can't imagine it. It's not even funny. I didn't have much money, so everything went to that, and I always had, well, mixed feelings, not just because of the money, but because of the time investment, because when I get hooked on something, I go in deep. I watch every coverage, I looked at every preview, deck lists. It was just bad vibes. Like, after a while I was too try hard, I was sweating it too much, and I spent all that money, and so I put it all away and said, no more Magic, it's not good for me, for my mental health. But a couple of weeks ago I saw that there's a big scene that makes proxies for Magic, and I was aware of proxies. Proxy is where you take a card and you don't buy it, but you make it yourself. And it can be as easy as taking a card and writing a different card name on it, and then it counts as that card. Easy enough. Or what I did in the past, I just printed some out and glued them onto existing cards, like very bad. These are like photocopier printer stuff. They look terrible, but you can play with them, and this is like a vintage deck. Like, that's a format where decks costs about $50,000 to $70,000, and so you just print them out and you can play with them. But nowadays there's a whole scene, especially with the hashtag ProxyPalooza on Instagram, where people make incredible cards, awesome cards. I link my favorite creators in the description of this video, and I got in on it, and I made some Hieronymus Bosch paintings into cards, and today I want to share my process with you, how I do it. And it's pretty easy. You don't need much. First of all, you need like I take art books, because if I print them out myself, like a good print is very hard to come by. So I just browse the local bookstore for art books that are on sale, and I just get those art books and I cut them out. Well, first I take a card and see how much I have to cut out. Then I just take my glue stick, just the good old Uhu, or Uhu here in Germany. I smother the card with it, being careful not to get anything on the back. And then I glue it on the paper, being very careful, applying pressure to it so that everything sticks together. It can come off sometimes, so you just have to re-adhesive it. Re-adhesive? Well, you have to put more glue on it. And then I take my scalpel and very carefully cut along the edges of the card. And sometimes I don't get it all, so I take some little scissors and I cut off what's overhanging, and especially I'm cutting off the edges, and then it looks good but a bit rough, so we have to take care of those edges. And I just take a copy marker. It's alcohol based, so it works very well. Water based colors can be a bit too runny. Those alcohol based markers are the best for it. Just invest the money for them, I highly recommend it. And I go along the edges of the card, which is more or less like edge highlighting miniatures. If you saw some of my miniature videos, I don't know who this video is actually for, if this is for Magic people or Warhammer people or indie wargaming people. Just follow along if you're interested in DIY and making stuff, I guess. And so after that, we have to form this little playing card into a magic card. So we need the name of the card and we need all that jazz, all that information that goes onto the card so that it can be a playable card. So my favorite thing is gold lettering. It looks awesome with these Bosch paintings. So I just take my brush and good old Retributor Armor by Citadel. Any other gold paint might work just as well. And I just block out the letters in the beginning so that I see how much space I need, and then I fill in the gaps more or less. It's like sketching but with paint, and you have to add a couple of layers because you don't want to use a too thick layer of paint. I just apply some layers, like 3 or 4, getting a bit wider with each brush stroke, and just be careful that I don't go over the edges, that I don't smother it all. But if there's any imperfections, we're gonna distress the card a bit more. Well, distress it with color, make it a bit more interesting. And then for bigger blocks of text, I take some white paint and I just paint on boxes. So in this case, with our wasteland, we paint on a white box, and this takes a couple of layers because we don't want the paint to be chalky. We don't want to see too many brush strokes, so I'm just taking my time, adding a couple of layers until it is all white. Then it's just a gold rim, and then we want to make it look a bit more special. So I'm taking an old dry brush, put it into my gold paint, and take these old Warhammer base just to have something to push it against, and then just splatter gold over the card, being careful but being messy at the same time because we want it to look cool. And that's the whole trick to making the card look a bit more distressed. We had a little bump in the upper corner, so I applied some gold paint there as well. And then comes the big kicker, using a very small micron pen. These are very excellent. This is a 0.003 size, so it is almost microscopical. I just take my time and write on the text very small. Usually I write it down on a piece of paper first so I see how much space I need. And after that, we got some gold on our edges, so we just take the Copic marker again and apply some black paint to the edges, making it clean. And with that, our wasteland is complete. So all that's left to do is sleeve them up, put them to the rest, and if you have the time and the energy, you can make a whole deck in that way. Or you can just look at all the other great proxies other people do, print them out, cut them out, glue them to cards, or just write a name on a card, whatever you like. That's the beauty with proxies. You can just make whatever, and it really gave me back my spirit to play some Magic again. Don't spend any money on it, well, except for my art supplies. So make your own cards, have some fun. I'm gonna post them on my Instagram. I'm gonna put the scans up on my Patreon someday. So thank you to all my patrons on patreon.com who support me there and who are interested not only in the miniatures but in the cards, in the role-playing games. On there I talk about all kinds of games, board games, role-playing games, you name it. I have some exclusive videos on there talking about all that stuff, and I think the sun is fading, so I'm ending it right here. Thank you for being interested in me making some magic proxies and enduring this loud cat. So yeah, I see you around next time, and me and Lars, we're gonna have a real cuddle session now, and you take care and bye bye.